So Terence Crawford and Joaquin Buckley have been going back and forth online, and it's reignited a whole debate on how would an MMA fighter do against a boxer on the streets and boxing and MMA. And I've seen a lot of people saying they want to see Crawford and Buckley fight. So I'm going to do a fun tier list today of how does Terence Crawford do in MMA against the top 15 ranked lightweights and welterweights, guys in and around his weight class. And it's just a fun exercise. I love both MMA and boxing, but I have 5 tiers here. Crawford wins. It's a 50-50 fight. Crawford's got a decent shot, about 20, 30%. Crawford's got a small chance, maybe like 5, 10, 15%. And then Crawford's cooked. Like, he's got almost no chance in an MMA fight. And we're going to assume that Terence Crawford has a full camp. Let's say he gets about 3 months to train, learn how to maybe defend some takedowns, how to check a leg kick, a slight bit of BJJ maybe, and then we put him into an MMA fight. Now, keep in mind, Crawford, obviously probably the best boxer in the world before you're tired, has state championship level of high school wrestling, and obviously one of the highest IQ fighters of all time. So let's get into it now. First fighter, we got Arman Tsarukyan. Now, Crawford, even with 3 months of wrestling training and a camp, would not have the wrestling to compete with Arman Tsarukyan. Arman's probably the best wrestler at lightweight, has great takedowns, control, ground pound, and I think once Arman gets that first takedown, Crawford is probably going to be cooked from the jump. So they fought 100 times. Crawford might land that big shot early about 1 or 2 times, but 98, 99% chance Arman Tsarukyan wins. Next, you got Max Holloway. Now, Holloway is primarily a boxer, right? He's a volume boxer too, not a power puncher, right? A lot of jabs, a lot of straights. But he has added kicks to his game the longer he's gone, right? A lot of spinning back kicks and leg kicks, body kicks. The kicks will be the biggest weapon for Holloway here. Because if Holloway boxes with Crawford, Crawford should chin him, right? And we've seen southpaws give Holloway some trouble. We've seen Holloway just get outboxed in general in MMA, right? Poirier, Volk. But I do think Holloway's kick should be his biggest weapon. Spinning back kick to the body, keep the distance, leg kick. For the most part, Max should be able to just kick Bud and hurt him eventually. But there's a small chance with Holloway's style. Holloway's not going to wrestle with Bud. And I don't think Holloway will have the wrestling to massively do anything to Bud. It won't be that big of a skill gap in wrestling. I think Crawford's got a small chance. I think if they fought about 10 times, Crawford probably catches him on the feet once or twice because he's primarily a boxer. But for the most part, I think Holloway just stays on the outside with the kicks and probably stops Crawford with some sort of kick. Next, we got Benoit Saint-Denis. Now, BSD is a real marauder, right? Goes forward, lacks defense, gets hit a lot, all to kind of set up a takedown or set up a shot in the feet. And that sort of style could present a lot of opportunities for Crawford because Crawford is such an expert counterpuncher, all right? He allows guys to come forward. We've seen the Spence fight, the Canelo fight. You come forward a little bit, he's going to counter you and hurt you, right? And BSD should have the grappling to take Crawford down early, but BSD is the type of guy to get hit a couple times to get his takedown, and he's going to march forward recklessly. And that gives Crawford a lot of chances. I'm going to say Terence Crawford has a decent chance against BSD in MMA. Like I said, most likely BSD gets a takedown, but just something tells me the way BSD fights that Crawford could maybe clip him. So if they fought 10 times, I think Crawford does chin him about 3 times out of 10. And the other 7 times, BSD gets him down and probably ground pounds him or submits him. Next, you got Joaquin Buckley. This is the man who kind of started this whole beef and is why I'm making this video. Now, Buckley, he is primarily a stand-up fighter, right? Throws a lot of hooks. I think Buckley's really bad on the feet, to be honest. Because there's a lot of hooks and not the best defense. And he doesn't really have a jab in his game plan. Doesn't really have a lot of boxing tools. But he's got some kicks, right? We've seen him, the Kasangane knockout, right? He's got some kicks. He's got some sort of offensive grappling. He's taken Imavov down. I think it's different in this. Like, Buckley was talking about fighting Crawford in the streets. I think Crawford would have a bit more of a chance in the streets compared to MMA because there's no cage, so he can move as much as he wants. Usually in a street fight, you don't really kick and stuff as much as you box. So in a street fight, I think Crawford has a decent chance. But in a cage where Crawford doesn't have a lot of space to move, I think Buckley should get his takedowns and should finish him on the ground. But like I said, with Buckley's boxing style, and he does usually tend to start fights on the feet, it gives Crawford a good chance to Kevin Holland him and just 1-2 down the pipe, knock him out. I'll say Crawford chins Buckley 1 or 2 times out of 10 if they fought. Next, you got Paddy Pimblett. Now, Paddy is a best weapon is BJJ, right? But he's an opportunistic grappler. If you shoot on him, like Bobby Green, he's going to submit you, or he's going to take your back, submit you. But Paddy on the feet is really, really bad. He's so sloppy, so hittable. Doesn't really, like, he was falling over, throwing punches against Gaethje. Throws uppercuts from way out of distance, right? It allows so many opportunities for Crawford to counter him. And like I said, Paddy isn't the highest level wrestler, right? He's an opportunistic grappler. You grapple with him, he's going to reverse you or ground pound you and take you down and submit you. Not take you down, he's going to reverse you and submit you. But Paddy's takedowns itself aren't like the highest level thing. Like I said, he's also super, super hittable on the feet. And Crawford is an expert boxer. Crawford's got state wrestling chops. You add in 3 months of a training camp to hone in more on the wrestling. I think Crawford has a genuine 50-50 shot against Paddy with the training camp. I think it's a really good shot. He just gets clipped early, Paddy. And I don't know, man. Paddy's IQ and his skills really lack sometimes. So I think Crawford with the training camp is a near even shot. Next, you got Kamaru Usman. Now, Usman is very old, but he's still a super high level wrestler, right? We've seen the Joaquin Buckley fight, took him down over and over, and he's a big guy. Realistically, Crawford can't do much against the first shot, right? And Kamaru does shoot early. He makes it a point against guys he needs to wrestle with. I think Crawford's kind of cooked against someone like Kamaru. Yes, he's old. Yes, his chin has been broken at this point, but not broken, but it's been cracked once by Leon. But realistically, Kamaru's getting the first takedown 95, 96 out of 100 times. Crawford's got about 4%, 3% chance. Next, you got Daniel Rodriguez. Now, D-Rod is also primarily a boxer, right? He's still ranked, having, I think, not fought in like almost a year, right? He's in like a Mexican prison or something right now. But D-Rod is primarily a boxer, doesn't really offensively grapple, doesn't throw a ton of kicks. He's got some kicks, but he doesn't really throw it. This is the type of fight I think would really favor Crawford, because the MMA boxing and boxing just does not correlate. And I think Crawford just picks him apart on the feet. I think D-Rod should get chinned early by Crawford's sort of boxing acumen. I think Crawford wins this fight. I think they make this fight 10 times. Crawford wins at least 6 times, to be honest. Just because I don't think D-Rod has much wrestling to take away Crawford's stand-up. And so Crawford's just a way better stand-up fighter. Next, you got Dan Hooker. Now, Dan is also primarily a striker on the feet. Getting older, more chinny, doesn't really use offensive wrestling. He's got some kicks, but they're not the most fight-ending kicks, right? He'll throw some body kicks, some leg kicks. But, like, Dan is super hittable on the feet right now. We've seen, like, Arnold Allen piece him up with boxing combinations. He's just really hittable and old. I think with the IQ gap as well, I don't think Dan is that smart of a fighter at times. I think Terence Crawford would chin Dan Hooker. With the 3-month training camp to add in the wrestling, just needs to learn how to check a kick. He needs to be able to tank a couple leg kicks. And I think given that Crawford can tank a couple leg kicks, which I think he could with a training camp, I think he chins Dan Hooker. Next, you got Bilal Muhammad. Now, Bilal is a good wrestler, right? Make no mistake about it. Yes, maybe the last couple of fights he hasn't been as successful, but those are against high-level MMA guys. Bilal's a high-level wrestler. He should get his takedowns in Crawford early, often. Not a huge finishing threat on the ground, but against someone like Crawford with no BJJ experience, he should also be able to submit him. And Bilal should comfortably win this. Now, there's a small chance if Bilal fights a little, not so smart like he did at points against JDM, Crawford chins him early, right? We've seen boxers hurt Bilal, drop him, knock him out, or boxing styles in MMA, right? Drop him, hurt him. So there's a small chance Crawford can chin Bilal early, but it's a very, very small chance. It's about 1 out of 10 times it'll happen. So I'll put Bilal in the small chance tier. Next, you got Justin Gaethje. Now, Gaethje is a kickboxer, right? He started from a wrestling background as a kid in high school and college, but the guy is a striker in MMA. And the leg kicks will be Gaethje's biggest weapon. The kicks in general, right? He has some of the best leg kicks in MMA. You can set up a head kick like he did against Poirier. Crawford won't be used to that. But at the same time, Gaethje's also 38. I know Crawford's 38, but Crawford's not the old 38. Crawford's a young 38 without taking a lot of damage in his career. Gaethje has been in so many wars. So Gaethje's 38 is different to Crawford's 38. And Gaethje is slowing down. He's very hittable. I do think his chin is crackable. And if Gaethje stands with Crawford, which is the likely thing, I think it presents a lot of opportunities for Crawford. Like I said, he's super hittable, and Crawford would be by far the best boxer he's ever faced. And I don't know. I don't think Gaethje would have a gigantic wrestling advantage. He'd have a good wrestling advantage over Crawford, but he's not like a finisher on the ground. Even if Gaethje does take Crawford down, right? You've seen Pereira, and when he started in MMA, he would get taken down a decent bit, but you just stay there, cover up, onto the next round, right? And I think that would open up opportunities for Crawford the longer the rounds go. And there's a good chance I think Crawford knocks out Gaethje with the big skill gap on the feet. Like I said, the kicks would be a major weapon for Gaethje, but Gaethje's been countered off of a kick before, right? The Poirier fight. I think Crawford could have some sort of a tactical, advantage in training camp. Look at that and look to counter off of a kick. So I think Crawford would have a decent shot against Gaethje. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this, and they're going to disagree with my whole list in general. I think my list will be super controversial, but I think people are underestimating Crawford's chances in MMA, to be honest. Next, you got Sean Brady. Now, Brady's a very high-level grappler, right? Can submit you, can control you, hard to get up when you get taken down. Crawford's not going to be able to get up from Brady's takedowns. Now, Brady has been chinned by not so good strikers like Bilal and a big guy like Morales, but it means it gives Crawford a tiny bit of a chance if he can blitz Brady early maybe and clip him. But for the most part, Sean Brady should submit Terence Crawford 9 out of 10 times and then get caught 1 out of 10 times. Next, you got Beneil Dariush. Now, Dariush is very, very chinny and old. Is he still a good wrestler? Yes. But can he go to that shot before he gets hit one time on the feet? I don't know. Because all it takes is one against Dariush. BSD didn't even throw a huge left hand, and he knocked him out. So a jab from Crawford might honestly drop Dariush. I genuinely believe would drop Dariush with the power that Crawford generates. So Crawford could just stay on the outside, boom, pop a jab. Dariush is down. Dariush has to be able to close the gap early, which I just don't know if he can do at this age, and I don't know if he can avoid the power. And like I said, I think Crawford, even if he does get taken down, can just cover up, play it safe, sit in guard. I think at some point Crawford would just knock out Dariush. I think very early, honestly. Next, you got Manuel Torres. Now, Torres is primarily a boxer also. He's a rangy guy, but his sort of boxing style wouldn't really work against Crawford's. But he's also got some kicks. With the range he has, he definitely land that, that left leg, the kick with the left leg. He's not the highest level grappler. He'd maybe be able to take Crawford down, though. It's a hard one for me. I'm somewhere between decent shot for Crawford and small chance. But I think the kicks would be a big problem for Crawford to deal with. So I'll say Crawford small chance. I think it's closer to here. I'll put Torres here. But I think maybe Crawford wins this fight 2 out of 10 times on the feet if Torres boxes with him. But for the most part, I think Torres' kicks would be able to keep him safe and then hurt Crawford. Now Rafael Fiziev, pretty similar story here. Muay Thai guy, but I would say more kick heavy than Torres, but also a little smaller, less rangy than Torres. So it presents some opportunities for Crawford to counter him with a shot on the feet. But at the same time, Fiziev's kick should be way too advanced for Crawford to deal with. Spinning attacks and body kicks and the leg kicks. Fiziev can also go to the takedowns if he needs to. We've seen him do that against Bahamondes. Even Gaethje took him down. I know Fiziev got knocked out with a boxing counter, right? Counter right hand in his last fight, but that's more because Rufi was able to maintain distance with his kickboxing Muay Thai approach. I think Rafa Fiziev would be a small chance for Crawford. Maybe if they fight 10 times, Crawford probably chins him 1 time, I would say. Next, you got Michael Chandler. Now, Chandler should have all the tools to very easily beat Terence Crawford. He's a high-level wrestler. He's explosive. When he takes you down, he has power to maybe ground and pound Crawford. But Chandler fights kind of low IQ. Not kind of low. Very low IQ every fight. And he does prefer to strike on the feet. He does prefer to give entertainment to the fans. I could see Chandler being one of those guys that are like, yeah, I'm coming to box with Terence Crawford. Give the fans the show they want. See you at the top, and then he just gets knocked out. But I think with his wrestling background, he should be able to take Crawford down. Like I said, with the IQ, I'm gonna put him in decent shot for Crawford. I think Crawford should be able to knock out Chandler at least 2 to 3 times out of 10. We've seen he struck with old Tony, got dropped. Oliveira dropped him. Poirier, Gaethje, so many people have hurt Chandler. And so it presents a lot of opportunities for Crawford, especially with Chandler being this old and a lot more hittable. So I think Crawford has about a 20 to 30% shot against Chandler. Next, you got Charles Oliveira. Most dangerous finisher in UFC history. Great grappler. Explosive striker, but not the best defensively. If Oliveira fights a smart game plan, he's going to take Crawford's back in 30 seconds, submit him. However, Oliveira does not fight smart sometimes, also quite often. He does prefer to strike on the feet, but Oliveira is not as bad as Chandler to where he gives chances to Crawford. Because Oliveira mixes in a lot more kicks than Chandler, and he teeps a lot. Those sort of attacks should be able to keep the distance. Now, Oliveira did box with Ilya and close the gap, which allowed Ilya to knock him out. If he does something like that with Crawford, Crawford's going to knock him out too. But Crawford shouldn't be able to beat Oliveira with all the weapons Oliveira has. Like I said, maybe 1 out of 10 times Oliveira lets himself get just knocked out boxing with him. But I think most likely Oliveira just kicks him or takes him down, or he should finish him. Probably submit him, I would say. Next, you got Michael Morales. I think Crawford's cooked against someone like Morales. Is Morales primarily a stand-up fighter in MMA? Yes. But he's a huge guy, 6 foot. He's got like a 79-inch reach. He's comes from a wrestling background. He can use it if he needs to. He can probably just kick Crawford on the outside. He can take Crawford down, probably at will with the size he has, just brute strength. I don't think Crawford has. If they fight 100 times, Crawford would have to be able to close the gap on Morales. Instead of a lot of the guys Crawford has a good chance against, they have to close the gap on him with the shorter reach and the smaller builds they have. Crawford would have to close the gap on Morales, which would only allow Morales to take him down or kick him or something. Crawford would be kind of cooked with the size Morales is at. So, and obviously too well-rounded. So Crawford's cooked against Morales. Next, you got Ilya Topuria. Ilya should have all the tools to beat Crawford as well. High-level wrestling, BJJ. His stand-up style wouldn't be as effective against Crawford because it's boxing versus boxing. And obviously Crawford's a much better boxer than Ilya. But Ilya has good leg kicks, which I would not like Ilya to keep this fight on the feet. I think Ilya's best shot is obviously grappling with him. That being said, Ilya does have a small ego. Not small. He has a huge ego, which gives Crawford a small chance, right? I'm going to submit Habib with a Darce choke in front of, or submit Islam with a Darce choke in front of Habib. Stuff like that. If he's like, oh, I'm going to box with Crawford and take his head off, then Crawford's going to knock him out. But I think Ilya's going to be smart enough. I don't think Ilya's a stupid fighter. That's why he's a two-division champion. I would say Crawford's got between 4 to 5% chance. So he's in between here and small chance and cooked. I'm going to give Ilya the respect, though, and say Ilya wins this fight about 97 out of 100 times. The other 3 times his ego takes over and he gets knocked out. Fares Ziem next. Now, Ziem is primarily, I would say his best attribute is the grappling. He's also solid in the clinch, but best attribute, the grappling. And I think Ziem would be smart enough to grapple with Crawford. Now, does he tend to strike on the feet during fights early on? Yes. Does that present opportunities to Crawford? Also, yes. But I think 9 out of 10 times, Ziem would take him down, and from there, either ground and pound him, submit him, control him the whole fight, probably finish. I'll give Crawford a small chance just because Ziem does strike on the feet early in a lot of fights, but with the grappling pedigree he has, Crawford has a very low shot. Next, you got Gilbert Burns. Burns, black belt BJJ, he should just submit Crawford very easily. He could pull guard, he could snatch up a leg, he could do whatever and submit Crawford. If this was prime Burns, I would say Crawford's cooked. But this is a very chinny old Burns, which gives Crawford a shot to maybe land one big punch if he's lucky. Or not lucky, if he can find the shot early. And just because of that, I'll give Crawford a small chance. Like I said, guys like Oliveira, Burns should submit. Brady should submit Crawford very easily. It's just they are very hittable, which if you're hittable with high-level grappling, you give Crawford a small chance. Next, you got Carlos Prates. Stand-up fighter, Muay Thai guy, and a lot of his weapons are with the hands, but Prates has a lot of weapons that aren't with the hands, right? He can elbow you, he can throw spinning attacks, he throws a lot of good kicks, knees to the body, and Prates has size. He has genuine size. If Prates can clinch Crawford and then just bang up a knee, what is Crawford going to do, right? Nothing. And Crawford's got a very low shot against Prates. Now, Prates does box early quite often, and Gary did rock him with a boxing combination, right? A 1-2-3, rock Prates early. So that gives Crawford a small chance on the feet in boxing range. But for the most part, even if Prates doesn't grapple at all with them, the knees, the kicks are going to be way too dangerous. I'll give Crawford about a 5% chance. Next, you got JDM. Boxer versus boxer. And obviously, Crawford is a million times better of a boxer than JDM. But even though JDM got out grappled dominantly by Islam, I think JDM is a good enough grappler to go to the grappling against Crawford, right? I think JDM is a smart enough fighter to know what his strengths and weaknesses are in a fight, right? He's going to know he needs to grapple Crawford early. And I don't think there's a gigantic gap between JDM's wrestling and Crawford's wrestling, especially if you add a training camp to Crawford, but there still should be a good enough gap for JDM to get him down over and over. And he's working with Craig Jones, BJJ. He's gonna submit Crawford most likely. Now the question is, do I give Crawford more than a 5% chance? 5% chance or more to put him in the small chance tier? I'll say yeah. I'll say just because JDM is primarily a boxer, there's a shot Crawford just knocks him out early. Or just defends on the ground once he gets taken down, plays it safe, and then gets back up to the feet to start the round and then lands a big one. But I'd give Crawford about a 5% chance against someone like JDM. Maybe 10% chance, actually. 5 to 10% chance. Next, you got Money Moicano. Now, Moicano is a better wrestler than striker. but he does strike a decent amount. This is an interesting one because Moicano is hittable. He doesn't fight the smartest, in my opinion. But he should definitely have the grappling for Crawford. He should be able to submit him, honestly, or ground pound him. But I don't know with Moicano, man. Moicano is getting older, doesn't fight the smartest. I could see Moicano doing something a little stupid and getting caught. Marauding his way like BSD and getting clipped. But I would say 8 times out of 10, Moicano does get Crawford down. But like I said, if Moicano decides to strike with him, which he does do in a lot of fights early, Moicano is not like the most dangerous kicker. He has some kicks, but not the most dangerous kicker. Doesn't have, crazy clinch striking or whatever. There's a good shot on the feet. Crawford can hurt Moicano. Next, we got Islam Makhachev. Crawford has almost no chance. Islam's probably the most well-rounded fighter in the world right now. One of the most well-rounded fighters ever. The grappling level is just two different worlds. You've got a state level wrestler and a world class sambo plus BJJ plus overall grappling acumen that Islam has. Islam is gonna beat Crawford 99 or 100 times. I would say 99 because Crawford might Martins him and just land a big shot in the first 30 seconds, but 99 out of 100 times, Islam would beat Terence Crawford in MMA. Next, you got Leon Edwards. Now, Leon, primarily a striker, kickboxer, but he's added a lot of grappling to his game since his championship run, even during his championship run, right? Taking down Kamaru, first one to officially take down Kamaru, took his back, took down Colby a couple times, took Protez's back. He's a good enough grappler to definitely submit Terence Crawford. Now, you look at Leon's last fight, sometimes he can be a little patient. He can be a slow starter. Even the Bilal fight, just a lot of fights, he's a slow starter. He does the little like stonewall BS, the guard. It's like a bad Philly shell, like where you like drop your other arm and you've got one arm. Like it's a really poor sort of defensive structure to go against Crawford, but because of the stonewall thing that he does and backing up in a straight line where Protez knocked him out, it gives Crawford a decent shot on the feet. So if it was just a stand-up fight, I'd give Crawford a 50% shot. Like I said, though, Leon is the type of guy to probably mix in the wrestling early. So I'll give Crawford a small chance against Leon Edwards. Next, you got Mateusz Gamrot. Now, Gamer, he's a heavy grappling approach. Should be a well enough grappler to control Crawford and finish him, or at least take down Crawford, control him. Now, he's a really bad striker. No power, not the most accurate, gets hit a decent bit. So that'll present some opportunities for Crawford. My issue, though, is I think even Crawford with a 3-month training camp will just not have the wrestling chops to compete with Gamrot. I'd give Crawford about a 10 to 15% chance. They fought 100 times, I think Crawford might, win 10 or 15 times. The other 85 times, I think Gamrot just takes him down and does what he wants. Next, you got Gabriel Bonfim. Good grappler, good in the clinch, solid defense. Bonfim is not the highest ranked welterweight, but I think he's a very underrated welterweight contender. And he's kind of got the style to where he doesn't kind of feed into Crawford's game plan, right? Like you can say somebody like Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira and Sean Brady are higher level than Gabriel Bonfim, but they're all a lot more hittable than Bonfim, and they kind of play a little bit into Crawford style, maybe on the feet, more than Bonfim does. So Bonfim is honestly in between these two tiers. Do I think Crawford could land a left hand if they're on the feet for a minute or two? Yes. So I'll say a small chance, but I think a very small chance. He's almost close to this tier, but I'd give Crawford about a 5 to 7% chance against Gabriel Bonfim off of training camp. Next, we got Michael Venom Page. Now, MVP, he's only going to strike with Crawford, right? He doesn't have the wrestling in general, the grappling. He doesn't offensively wrestle at all. Defensive grappling, not the best. I wouldn't be shocked if Crawford could take MVP down. If you told Crawford you got 15 minutes to take MVP down, I think Crawford might be able to take MVP down. But this will be on the feet. And MVP is going to bounce in and out of range. He's going to do the hops into a right hand or some sort of kick. Now, the leaping right hand is what could allow Crawford some opportunities, right? We've seen Douglas Lima kick him, knock him out off a counter. Crawford won't kick him, but there's counter opportunities for MVP, right? A lot of guys MVP outstrikes, they don't know how to box, right? And they don't know how to counter. And an unorthodox guy or counter just somebody coming in overly aggressive. Crawford will obviously know how to do that. So it presents some opportunities for Terence Crawford to ping him with the check hook or a straight left coming in. But MVP is for the most part, a very smart fighter. He fights his style. He doesn't care if it's very low output or if it's boring or whatever. He's just going to showboat after landing one shot. So there's just a world where MVP just kicks on the outside and showboats, kick, showboat. Crawford has no answer to it. I'll give Crawford a small chance, right? Like I said, he needs a big counter off of some sort of MVP blitz or like leaping right hand, but MVP's kicks, I think, on the outside would be a big problem for Crawford to deal with. Next, you got Mauricio Rufy, also a very unorthodox but effective striker on the outside, and also throws a lot of kicks and doesn't leap in like MVP, but has a similar sort of right hand. But Rufy can also trip you and sort of mix in a bit of grappling. I think this would also primarily be a stand-up fight. And again, I think the kicks of Rufy are just too dangerous for Crawford to deal with. All sorts of spinning kicks. Crawford would have no experience with that. Like I said, the trips, the calf slicers, like whatever. Rufy could do so many things to Crawford in his overall striking arsenal. Because he's a striker, you always have got to respect Crawford's boxing ability, right? Being the best boxer in the world. He's going to have a good shot always to land one if Rufy boxes with him. But for the most part, he's got a low shot. Next, you got Jeff Neal. Now, Jeff Neal is a boxer through and through. They call him Hands of Steel, but Jeff Neal does not offensively grapple like that. He doesn't kick like that. Jeff Neal's going to stand there. He's going to stand there, and he's going to throw a 1-2, or he's going to stand there, look for the left hand, right? That's Jeff Neal's game plan, and that allows a lot of chance for Crawford, because Crawford should knock out Neal in boxing range pretty easily. I mean, we've seen MMA fighters rock Neal, so a boxer like Crawford should be able to rock him in the stand-up pretty easily. Now, there's a small chance Jeff Neal, knowing that it's a boxer versus boxer and he's not got much of a chance, just goes to the takedowns. But I haven't seen much from Jeff Neal as a grappler to tell me, like, yeah, he's going to be able to dominate Crawford on the ground for 25 minutes and can get his takedown every round and, whatnot. Because, like I said, Crawford could just stay in guard. Alex Pereira, like, how Pereira was early on in his kickboxing career, just not his MMA career, transitioning from kickboxing. It was just, I'm going to stay in guard, play it safe, not let you throw off punches. I'm going to hold your hands. I'm going to put my head next to your head and just play it safe. Crawford might do that if he does get taken down. And on the feet, Neal, like I said, is a boxer through and through. Gives Crawford a very good shot. He's also chinny. He's old. I think this is a 50-50 fight. I think Crawford has a very good chance to knock him out early or whenever during the course of a fight. But I don't know if Jeff Neal is going to have the IQ and the wherewithal to go to the grappling and how dominant he can be with it. Too many question marks for me with Neal's grappling. And stand-up Crawford is better. I think it's a 50-50 fight. Next, you got Colby Covington. Now, Colby's been very washed as of recent, right? And if you can stuff the initial takedown from Colby, you should beat him. Being that Buckley was able to rock him and cut him open and piece him up. If Crawford can stuff an initial takedown in a round, he should beat the crap out of Colby on the feet. But Colby's still just way too high level of wrestler, I think, for Crawford, right? You've seen the guy in RAF against Luke Rockhold have his way with the former UFC champion. Even at this age, his wrestling is just too good. I think Colby is just one of those guys who's going to shoot in the first 20 seconds, take him down, work him, and probably submit him, honestly. I think Colby should have the submission skills to submit Terence Crawford. So, small chance, even though he's older and he's washed and he's a lot more hittable, I would say small chance. And then lastly, we got Ian Gary. Now, Gary is one of the most well-rounded, complete mixed martial artists. He can box, he can kick, he can grapple offensively, defensively. Gary's super complete. Now, has Ian Gary been dropped in boxing range in MMA? Yes, Sankanan. But do I think Gary's a smart enough fighter to not do BS like that against a boxer like Crawford? Yes, I think Gary's a very smart fighter. So realistically, Ian Gary has the wrestling chops and the grappling chops to do whatever he wants to Terence Crawford. He's going to take him down. He's going to take the back. He's going to submit him. He does whatever he wants in the grappling department. And I think Crawford has less than a 5% chance against Ian Gary. Even with the training camp, even with the wrestling background he has, state championship level, Ian Gary would cook Crawford on the ground. So that's my tier list of how Terence Crawford does against UFC ranked competition at lightweight and welterweight around his weight class. I think there's 3 guys I would favor him to beat out of the 32, 33 guys. 2 guys I think he's 50-50 against because of their style. And there's a couple of guys he's got a decent shot against. But you guys let me know, how would Terence Crawford do in MMA with the training camp and the skills he has? Let me know some more video ideas you want to see. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 2,000 subscribers. But thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.